The girl at the back seat. Brian leaned back in his seat and looked around with disinterest at the mass of human bodies writhing on the dance floor. He cursed himself for allowing them to drag him into this place. His mind wandered to that morning's incident when his boss had casually offered him a project for him to handle. It was something he loved doing and knew the remunerations that came with it would be a tidy sum for the company. Of course, his team would get a nice percentage out of it, and they had enthusiastically accepted his offer of a celebratory dinner. His team comprised of creative, impressionable young adults who worked as hard as they partied. It was supposed to be a simple dinner at a nearby eatery, and someone just had to suggest checking out the crowd at the club next door. Before he knew it, he was paying for drinks and half the group disappeared into the intensely pulsating crowd, gyrating to the loud amplified music. It was 1:15 when Julie signaled to him from across the table. He looked at her and mouthed silently, "What?"
Can you give us a ride home? I think this one is a gone case.
She shouted over the din of the throbbing music, which was beginning to give him a headache. He looked at her fingers pointing downwards and saw Haley slumped at her thigh. Brian shook his head and took out his phone. He typed a message in their group chat and told them that he was going home and calling it a night. There would be 2 extra spaces left in his car if anyone else cared to join them. He then stood up and walked out of the club, with Julie half dragging Haley behind her.
Wait here. I will go and get the car, okay?
Julie just nodded and was about to say something, but stopped when Haley suddenly vomited her dinner at the drain nearby. Brian turned and quickly walked away. Not long after, he located his car and drove towards the front of the club, searching for signs of his team. Fortunately, Julie saw his car and pulled Haley forward. Behind them, he saw Adam and another girl follow suit. As they entered the car noisily, Brian handed a plastic bag over to Julie.
Here, take this and stand by. She might decide to spill again.
Julie took the bag and slumped at the back seat with Haley snoring softly beside her. The drive home was quiet, with Adam and he talking quietly in the front. He glanced at the rearview mirror and for the first time caught a look of the third girl. She did not look familiar to him, and definitely not from his team whom he had brought to dinner earlier. He glanced at Adam and deduced that she might be someone Adam had just picked up from the club. That social animal, he mused.
We're sending all the ladies home first, okay? Then I'll drive you home.
He told Adam.
Fine by me, boss. I'm just thankful for the ride.
Strange. Not once during the ride did Adam introduce the girl sitting quietly behind them. He wanted to ask Adam, but the younger man was dominating the conversation and more inclined to talk about a new restaurant that he had visited recently and dropping hints about another group outing there. Soon enough, they reached Julie and Haley's rented apartment.
Adam, you wait here, alright? While I send the ladies up, okay?
Adam nodded and took out his phone, settling comfortably in his seat. The trio walked to the lift lobby and proceeded to their apartment. After saying their goodbyes, Brian left them at their door. He took the lift down and walked briskly to his car. From a distance, he saw Adam scrolling through his phone in the front seat. The girl was still sitting stiffly at the back seat, staring straight ahead.
What the heck, Adam? What kind of gentleman are you? Picking up girls and totally ignoring them?
He muttered to himself as he rounded the car and climbed back into the driver's seat. Adam did not hear him though, and gave him an innocent grin as soon as he entered the car. Brian shook his head, gave out a loud sigh, and slowly drove the car out of the parking lot. On the way there, Adam suggested a shorter route to his place.
Are we sending her first? Is she staying near where you live?
Who?
Your friend at the back. You have been ignoring since we left the club. Are you deaf? Picking up someone at the club and then ignoring her throughout the whole ride?
What friend? Only one plastic bag there lah.
Adam looked behind him and pointed out the plastic bag left behind by Julie. Brian could not react, for at that moment, when he looked at the rearview mirror, he almost lost control of his wheel. The girl was staring right back at him. The knowing sneer on her face made him gasp sharply, and he stepped hard on the brakes. The car screeched to a halt. Fortunately, he was driving slowly at that time, and there were no cars on the quiet road that night. The sudden act did not cause them any harm.
Hey, you okay or not? Why are you stopping in the middle of the road?
Adam glanced around them. He regretted telling Brian to take the shorter route. The trees at this time of the night looked especially daunting, and the yellow glow of the street lamps casted eerie shadows inside the car. It took a while for Brian to push the gear into parking mode and regain his composure. He then turned slowly to look at the back. True enough, the only physical thing present was the lone plastic bag lying limply in the middle of the back seat. He faced the front and chanced a look at the mirror again. And there she was, staring right back at him. Brian let out a small shout of frustration as he slumped back in his seat. Adam seemed to understand as it slowly dawned upon him that Brian might have seen something that was not quite welcomed at that very moment. Calmly, he said,
Here, boss. Why don't we exchange places? I can drive this car, no problem.
At first, Brian just stared blankly at Adam. Words failed him when Adam left the passenger seat and opened the door of the driver's side. He let Adam coax him out of the car, then transferred himself to the passenger's side. Before letting himself into the driver's seat, Adam opened the back door and said sternly,
Get out! You do not belong with us. We do not wish to be with your kind. Get out! Go now!
Adam felt a sudden chill. and a familiar prickle at the back of his neck when he stood near the opened door. He heard a soft whispery on his right ear, but he did not flinch and remained perfectly still. It was not his first time in dealing with unknown entities, and he hoped that whatever was spooking his boss would leave them alone. A few moments later, he eased himself into the driver's seat. Brian was leaning against the headrest, his eyes closed and breathing shakily. He opened one eye and looked at Adam.
Is it gone?
Adam nodded slowly, pulled the gear from park to drive, and slowly drove away.
Come and spend the night in my place, boss. It's just my mom and myself. I don't think you are in any condition to drive home tonight.
Brian nodded weakly and let the youngest member of his team take over his car because there was no way he was going to drive back home alone after what had just happened that night. What do you think? Who could that girl at the back seat be?